Clive to Carle here with Spencer Feldman, and we're going to talk about the liver and the gallbladder today. Spencer, enlighten us.
So, there are some wonderful old school remedies for the liver and gallbladder. Well, first off, why would we want to do anything for them? The liver does a number of things. It works with proteins. In terms of the kind of application we have in functional medicine, the liver is seen as the primary detox organ. And up until 80 years ago, most people didn't have to do anything for their liver. It worked behind the scenes. But nowadays, with the convenience of modern chemistry, the liver is exposed to chemicals of types and in quantities it never had to in our evolutionary history. And so it behooves us to learn how to take care of this organ. In terms of uh, the gallbladder itself is it's a little sac that the liver secretes the bile into, and then the gallbladder will squeeze it when necessary to help digest fats in the food. So the gallbladder can also have issues, but the issues of the gallbladder are really more issues that the liver caused, meaning the bile that was coming into the gallbladder was too coagulated. So nowadays, we also now have to start working on the gallbladder, whereas in the past, that was something that was not needed quite so often. Now, the two old school remedies for the liver and the gallbladder were coffee enemas and liver gallbladder flushes. And a coffee enema was done, as one might suspect from the name. You would take a couple of cups of warm coffee and take it as a retention enema, laying on your side in a bathtub for half an hour. And while that wasn't a comfortable experience necessarily or convenient, what would happen would be the aspects of the compounds in the coffee when they went to the liver, if they go in that direction, taken orally, it has a different effect. But when you take it rectally and it goes through the blood vessels in the distal colon and through the hemorrhoidal complex, the hemorrhoids are actually the blood vessels that you find at the bottom of the colon. And in most people, you don't even know they're there. But if someone's liver starts getting backed up in a particular way mechanically, the pressure can actually cause a distension of those blood vessels, and those are called hemorrhoids. But in a healthy person, you don't really see them. However, they are an access point for getting things directly into the liver. So when coffee is taken rectally, not orally, but when it's taken rectally, the body sees the coffee as a toxin. It's not really toxic, not very much, but it thinks it is. So it tricks the body, it triggers the body into jumpstarting its detoxification pathway. Now, the way detox works is if a toxin is water soluble, you simply pee it out. But if it's fat soluble, you can't pee it out. It's stuck in the fatty membranes of the body, the bilipid membranes of the cells, around the nerves, the fat between organs, and a lot of it goes on the brain because the brain's basically a couple of pounds of fat. So, and nerves. So what the coffee will trigger is something called the phase one, that's the cytochrome P450 enzyme system. And what that does is it either attaches or unmasks a polar group on a toxin in the body. The polar group, you could think of it as like a little grappling hook, right? So it's either adding a little grappling hook or unmasking a grappling hook that's there. Now, that's not enough to get rid of the toxin. It actually makes the toxin more toxic. But it only does that temporarily because right away, depending on the type of chemical that the grappling hook was attached to or unmasked on, a particular conjugate will then grab onto the grappling hook. So it could be glutathione or sulfate or some B vitamins, or it could be a methyl group or glucuronolactone. And then the chemical is completely soluble and not as reactive as it was a second ago. That second part is called phase 2. And then you can either urinate it out, or it'll go out the bile and go out into the toilet that way. The challenge is that a lot of people now don't have enough conjugating agents in them. So you can give them the coffee enema or the coffee rectally. It'll simulate phase 1, but it doesn't go to phase 2. Those compounds aren't there because they've already been used up detoxifying other things. And so then the person is left with a half-baked or a half-detoxed chemical, which is worse than if they left it alone. And this is the problem a lot of people with chemical sensitivities find themselves in. They try to detox. They don't do a complete detox, and it makes them worse. The Zenaplex product that you carry of ours contains the organic coffee as a suppository, so you don't have to do a 30-minute retention enema. But we also added in all the conjugating agents. So we're giving them both at the same time, so you don't end up with just phase 1 and not phase 2. And so there's that. So that's not only is it an alternative to the coffee enema, it's superior in the sense that you're actually doing both phases that have to get done. Now, let me tell you, you can find on your foot a point that will be sensitive if the liver is having some trouble. So an interesting question is, do you need a liver flush? What I would pose is that's sort of like asking if you need to change the oil in your car. Yes, on a regular basis, right? Or depending on how often you're riding. So in the 21st century, it's a good idea to do a liver flush once or twice a year, just as a general maintenance. Now, I had a friend come over. I saw him last week, was visiting, and he was concerned about his liver. And but he said, but his liver enzymes were all okay. So I pressed on a point on the top of his foot called liver 3. It's an acupuncture point, liver 3. And if you go online and look on an image search, where it shows you the bones and the tendons and where it is, you can find that point. It's between the big toe and the pointer toe on your right foot, up on the top, just before the bones fuse. And I pressed in there, and boy, was it sore for him. And he said, oh, well, that's anywhere over there would be sore. I said, okay, I'm going to move a half an inch off. Is it sore there? He goes, no. But he said, but it would be sore for anybody. I'm like, all right. I take off my shoe. I'm like, here's the point. Press on it as hard as you can. And, he doesn't want to hurt me. So he presses. I'm like, harder. He presses. I'm like, with all the strength you've got. And he's squeezing and he's looking at me, and I'm like, doesn't hurt. It's not even sore. And now imagine pressing that hard on your foot. He goes, no, I couldn't take that. I'm like, okay. So the nice thing about the liver 3 point is it is a global indicator. Sorry, it's an indicator of something in the liver, right? Whereas if you do a liver enzyme test, which is great to do, you can have a false negative on a liver problem, because it might be that those particular enzymes are not the ones that are emblematic of what's going on in your liver. So certainly if you have high elevated liver enzymes, you've got a liver issue going on. But if you don't, that doesn't mean you're in the clear. Just press that point. And so the Zenaplex is our way of, supporting someone who's got some liver stuff, may have some liver things. And that liver point, liver 3, is a great way for someone at home to determine if the liver is upset with them.
So if somebody decides to use the Zenaplex, for how many days should they, what's the procedure?
Well, you can't so much overdo that one. And I've had people say, oh, I can't do coffee. It gets me too stimulated. I think maybe in 25 years, I've had 3 people tell me they couldn't do Zenaplex because they were sensitive to the coffee. Because taken rectally, it has a different chemical pathway. You could do it every day for 10 days. That's a box. And that's normally more than enough. But again, press on that point. If after day 10, the point is less sore, but still hurts, take a week off and do another 10 days of it. That point's a great way to see what's going on. And if that point continues being sore, well, then, we might look at something like albendextrin to kind of dredge out the lysosomes and go into some other things.
Using the albendextrin to take out the fats and the nasty proteins.
Right. So, there's a thing called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease that, an enormous number of people have now. It's when the body, okay, so what the body does is when there's something in it it wants to get rid of, it will try to recycle it. And if it's a toxin, it'll try to incinerate it. And if it's a toxin that it can't incinerate, it'll store it away. And it does all three of these things in what are called the lysosomes. So the lysosomes are the recycling centers, the incinerators, and the landfills of the body. It is my suspicion that when someone's lysosomes are so full, first off, you don't want the lysosomes to be acting as landfills, because then they can't work as incinerators and recycling centers. They're stuffed. So that's a last-ditch attempt. And I think that when you see someone with lysosomes that are stuffed in their liver specifically, which is not all that uncommon, then the liver says, well, I need to stick these toxins somewhere. Let me just secrete a bunch of fat and we'll stick it in that. It's sort of like a backup to the lysosomes. So when I see fatty liver, I'm thinking, okay, this is a really toxic liver. I want to clear that. I want to support the body in clearing that liver fat out with the understanding that there's toxins inside of it. But then I also want to go and clean out the lysosomes. And I think cyclodextrins are a fantastic way to do that. They're actually one of the only ways I know to do that. The only way I'm aware of. And we have cyclodextrins in the albendextrin product. So we've talked about the alternative to the coffee enema. That's the Zenaplex. So the other old school remedy protocol would be a liver gallbladder flush, which if you thought a coffee enema was uncomfortable, wait till you hear about this one. Optimally, it would be like a week or two of apple cider vinegar with the malic acid softening up the stones, followed by, an enormous amount, half a cup or more of olive oil, and then some Epsom salts. And the olive oil triggers the gallbladder to squeeze because it thinks because there's a bunch of oil there that needs to be digested by bile. And the Epsom salt, it's a genius idea. The Epsom salt dilates the sphincter of Oddi, which is the muscular sphincter, the ring that is at the bottom of the gallbladder that opens and closes depending on how much bile it wants to release. And the idea is if you dilate it enough, you can pass a bunch of stones. Okay, there's a couple of issues with the liver gallbladder flush. One is the body recycles 95% of its bile. So you don't necessarily want to flush all the bile out, because if you dump huge amounts of bile out, you may not be able to reabsorb all of it, and then you've got to make more of it. That's a minor issue. In some cases, you do want to do one flush if that bile is toxic, but then you have to rebuild the bile after. The other issue is that if you keep doing liver gallbladder flushes, you end up drying out the liver. It runs out of bile, and that creates more gallstones. Because gallstones were because there wasn't enough bile and it got too thick. It went from sludge to stones. Another issue with this is people will be told, do the liver gallbladder flush until such time as you stop getting stones. But what they won't tell you is that you can get false stones that are created by the liver gallbladder flush. If you take that much olive oil, you can actually make these floating green olive oil stones that aren't stones, they're artifact. And then so a person will just say, oh, I've done 20 gallbladder flushes and I keep getting stones out. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're making what you're seeing as artifact, then you're just dredging your liver and drying it out of any bile it ever had left. So you can actually, if you are going to do a liver gallbladder flush, there is an intelligent way to do it. Multiple times is not the way. So why might we want to do a liver gallbladder flush? Okay, so let's talk about what bile is and does. Bile is an alkali soap. The alkali part is important because the stomach acid, the stomach creates acid to break down proteins and to disinfect the food you just ate. But if it's not neutralized, it'll keep digesting and burning all the way through the intestines. The stomach has a very thick mucus layer to protect it from stomach acid. The intestines don't. So you want that stomach acid to be neutralized. So bile, which is alkaline, neutralizes the stomach acid. And then it has a detergent effect, and it allows you to digest fats. But that detergent effect actually does a couple of other things. The detergent effect can also break down bacteria in the small intestine. You want bacteria in the large intestine. That's called your microbiome, hopefully. You don't really want it in your small intestine. And when you get small intestine overgrowth, that can be a sign that bile is not doing its job. Another thing that bile does is it triggers the FXR receptors in the ileum, which will make natural antibiotics. So what happens is, food is supposed to go from your small intestine through your ileocecal valve into your large intestine, but sometimes food backs up, especially if there's gas pressure in your colon. It can, when that ileocecal valve opens up, it can actually geyser up fecal matter up into your small intestine. And you don't want bacteria in your small intestine. So the FXR receptors at the end of your small intestine near your ileocecal valve are triggered by bile saying, okay, we are about to open the large intestine, the ileocecal valve. We may get a little bit of backwash. Let's kill any bacteria that comes up. So bile is important for that. Bile stimulates peristalsis. You get a lot of people that don't have food going to them at a proper speed. And, I've had people say, oh, I go to the bathroom every day. But okay, if what's coming out of you was something you put in a week ago, even if you go to the bathroom every day, if it's 7 days old, that's a problem. You can measure your transit time by taking a tablespoon of liquid chlorophyll with a meal, and then wait to see how many days it takes for your stool to turn green. And, the water will actually kind of discolor green. After you've gone to the bathroom, you'll see the toilet water kind of go green. That's your sign. 24 to 36 hours is optimal. 48 hours is acceptable. Beyond that, you need to start working on transit time, and there's things to do that. Go for long walks. Don't spend a lot of time sitting. Get a stand-up desk, and then get the bile moving. Another issue is if you have gallstones, which it's more likely if women have them more than men. Especially if they're a little overweight, but I've seen men get it. If someone gets a stone in there and it jams in the the wrong spot, it can jam open the pancreatic duct. And now what you can end up having is every time the bile squirts down, it can also squirt into the pancreas and create alkali and digestive pancreatic burns. And people can damage their pancreas not realizing it's a problem from the gallbladder. So how would you know if you have a gallbladder issue? Well, it turns out there's a gallbladder point. It's gallbladder 41. So like for the liver, the gallbladder is on your right side. You're going to use your right foot and you press on gallbladder 41. And if that's really painful or uncomfortable, consider looking at working on your gallbladder. The gallbladder is a very forgiving organ, but and a lot of people who are told they have to go in for gallbladder surgery, what I would say is, if the wall of the gallbladder isn't grossly enlarged or gangrenous, then that gallbladder may be recoverable. You just have to flush it out carefully. If that gallbladder wall has gotten gangrenous, then it might be time to have that thing pulled. And the idea is not to have your gallbladder removed, which means you want to see problems before they get to that point. So pressing on gallbladder 41, or shoulder problems sometimes, issues with rage, problems with fatty foods. These are all signs of gallbladder issues. And so what we did is we made a suppository that would take the place of the liver gallbladder flush. Now, if you want to do a liver gallbladder flush, fine, do it after 10 days of glytamins, which is the product with the liver gallbladder, the gallbladder support. Do the glytamins for 10 days, then do a liver gallbladder flush just one time if you really want to just dump everything out. But rather than doing something very dramatic, like trying to give birth to a bunch of gallstones, I prefer just melting them out. It takes, maybe 2 weeks rather than 2 days, but it's much more gentle on the system. So the 3 most painful things a human can experience, from what I've heard from people who've had all three, is numbers 2 and 3 would be kidney stones / childbirth. I've heard some people say kidney stones are worse than childbirth. And the worst one I've heard, the worst pain a human can experience is a gallbladder attack, meaning a gallstone has got stuck somewhere. I've been through kidney stones. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I can't imagine something more painful, but there it is. And so a nice thing to do for yourself is a gallbladder flush. And if you would to alternate the Glidamins and the Zenoplex, for 20 days, one of each back and forth, liver, gallbladder, that's a really nice thing to do to do for your body once a year.
If I remember rightly, it was oxalates, an overdose of oxalates that caused your kidney stones. Is that right?
Yes. So I was, there's a lot of foods out there that we're told are good for us. Spinach, chia seeds, things like this, things that are loaded with oxalates. And I was having some breakfasts with chia seeds and almonds and cardamom, all of which are incredibly, and cinnamon, I think one other. Basically, I was, sesame seeds. I was unwittingly creating oxalate bombs for myself every morning. And over the course of 2 weeks, I gave myself kidney stones. So, yeah, won't do that again.
Good. I'm pleased about that. So I once did the traditional kidney flush with the olive oil and stuff. Oh my God, it was unpleasant.
You mean liver gallbladder flush?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just horrid. And I'd read that you're meant to do it 12 times. I thought, never again. I'm just not doing it. So when I discovered the glycemins, I thought, wow. And the idea of being able to do a coffee enema as well without having to lie down in the bath for half an hour. I mean, just incredible products. I really congratulate you on them. Very, very excellent products.
Oh, thank you. I have one last story. I'll tell you about the Glidamins. I got a phone call from a woman. She was in her mid-70s, and she was calling to thank me because her headaches were gone. And I said, "Oh, well, what did you do?" She goes, "Oh, I took Glidamins." I said, "Oh, well, that's lovely, ma'am. I'm very happy." She goes, "No, really, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you." I'm like, "Wow, these were some bad headaches, huh?" She goes, "I'd had them since I was 15." This woman had had headaches chronically for 60 years. And
Wow.
likely due to some gallstone that was stuck there. Because the gallbladder meridian goes up around the head, right? It goes up the leg, through the shoulder, up into the head. So you get sometimes you get locked shoulder or headaches. And like, wow, so she took the Glidamins, her headaches were gone, and she got to spend I don't know, the last 10, I guess, years of her life without headaches. So, never too late to try to clean the body out.